Right, ready to dive into a topic that I think everyone's at least a little curious about, right? Alchemy.
Alchemy.
Yeah, it brings to mind like bubbling cauldrons, maybe a get-rich-quick scheme or two. Trying to turn lead into gold.
Right, that's the popular image for sure. But alchemy, at its core, it was about so much more than just, material transformation.
Okay.
It really was about understanding like the very essence of matter. And for the alchemist, that meant understanding the interconnected nature of, well, everything really, the physical and the spiritual world.
Okay, so less about like literally manufacturing gold and more about this pursuit of inner and outer perfection, kind of a concept that it sounds like many cultures were exploring, right?
Precisely. And you're right to bring up cultures because while the image of the European alchemist, a strong one, alchemical practices were flourishing across the globe long before the European Renaissance.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah. And each culture, each one had its own unique flavor, its own approach to these central alchemical questions.
So where do we even begin to unpack this global tapestry of alchemical thought? I mean, where do we even start?
Let's start centuries before the Common Era in China.
Okay.
Taoist alchemists, they were brewing elixirs, and not just for longevity, but as a means to actually achieve immortality, often using substances like cinnabar, which, and this is interesting, contains mercury, an element that we're going to, we'll touch upon again later because it really captivated alchemists across continents.
Wow, talk about a powerful element, right?
Yeah.
Popping up in different cultures like that.
Yeah.
But you mentioned that these different cultures, they all had different approaches. So if the Chinese, they were focused on immortality through these elixirs, what were other civilizations? What were they focused on?
So while the pursuit of longevity, that was pretty common.
Right.
In ancient Egypt, alchemy was deeply intertwined with the practical. Think metallurgy, cosmetics, even the development of early distillation techniques. Things that would actually later become central to Islamic alchemy. The Egyptians, they saw the divine reflected in the natural world, so their alchemy, it was about understanding and harnessing those divine energies.
That's quite different from that image of the alchemist toiling away in isolation, isn't it?
Yeah.
It sounds like they were really craftspeople, innovators in a way.
Absolutely. And this connection between the practical and the philosophical, well, it only deepened with the rise of Greek philosophy.
Okay.
Thinkers like Aristotle, Plato, with their ideas about the elements and the nature of reality, well, they heavily influenced the development of alchemical theories, especially the idea of transmutation, and not just of metals, but of the self.
So we're talking about a system of knowledge that's evolving, incorporating new ideas, building on itself. Did this evolution, did it continue?
Absolutely. And this is where things get really interesting, okay? Fast forward to the Islamic Golden Age, a period of incredible intellectual flourishing. Scholars, people like Geber, and his work would later have a profound impact on European alchemists. They made significant strides in things like distillation, crystallization, techniques we now consider, fundamental to chemistry.
It's fascinating how interconnected this all is. It really highlights how knowledge in general, not just alchemical knowledge, was being shared and built upon across, across these different cultures. Mm-hmm. But let's be honest, you can't really talk about alchemy without at least a little curiosity about the more, shall we say, sensational aspects, the Philosopher's Stone, elixirs of life. But these were more than just attempts at, wealth or immortality, right?
Exactly. These were expressions of a central alchemical belief that everything in the universe moves towards perfection, a state of ultimate purity and balance.
Okay.
The Philosopher's Stone, for example, it wasn't about just creating gold, it was about replicating and maybe even accelerating that natural process of perfection that they believed was happening all around us.
So in essence, they were trying to tap into a fundamental force, a process of refinement, and kind of speed it up, whether it be for matter or even for the human spirit.
Precisely. And this pursuit of perfection, it extended to the quest for the elixir of life.
Right.
Just as they sought to, refine matter, alchemists believed in refining the very essence of life itself.
Okay.
And it's important to remember that they weren't just, throwing random ingredients into a cauldron. They were meticulous observers of the natural world.
Okay, so meticulous observation was key.
Yeah.
And speaking of observation, they were working with some pretty potent substances, right? I mean, we've all heard the stories about mercury and its, let's say, unpredictable nature.
No, mercury, with its ability to, to transition between liquid and solid states, it absolutely captivated them. It seemed to embody the very essence of transformation.
Right.
But you're right, they were working with substances that that could be incredibly dangerous, even fatal, which really speaks to the experimental nature of their craft. One alchemist who understood the dual nature of these substances was Basil Valentine. He made really significant contributions to the understanding of antimony and its medicinal properties.
It's a good reminder that the alchemists were kind of walking a fine line, weren't they? Pushing boundaries, experimenting, sometimes with, well, dangerous results.
Yeah.
Which makes these stories about, the legendary alchemists, those who seem to operate at the very edge of human understanding, well, it makes them all the more intriguing, doesn't it?
It's difficult to separate, fact from fiction, but their pursuits, their supposed achievements, they continue to fascinate us, don't they?
Yeah.
Take Nicolas Flamel, for instance.
Right.
Was his wealth the result of the Philosopher's Stone, or was he simply a shrewd businessman? The mystery itself, it speaks volumes.
Right. I mean, everyone loves a good mystery.
Right.
And speaking of enigmatic figures, you can't forget the Count of Saint-Germain.
Right.
Fluent in numerous languages, a master of music, and rumored to possess an unaging appearance. I mean, was this alchemical mastery, or simply a man who understood how to cultivate an air of mystery?
The Count is a perfect example of how alchemy and legend, they become so entwined.
Right.
It's difficult to separate, the man from the myth, but his story, like Nicolas Flamel's, it highlights this enduring fascination with the potential of alchemy to transcend human limitations.
And speaking of transcending limitations, there's Fulcanelli, who, to this day, remains shrouded in mystery. I mean, we don't even know his true identity.
Right.
Yet, his writings on alchemy, particularly his exploration of alchemical symbolism and architecture, I mean, they continue to be studied and debated.
Fulcanelli's work is a testament to the depth and complexity of alchemical thought. It wasn't just about practical techniques, it was about understanding the universe and our place within it. And to truly understand that, well, we need to delve into the language of alchemy, a language rich with symbolism and hidden meanings.
Like a secret code waiting to be deciphered.
Yes.
We're talking symbols, coded language. I mean, it all sounds like something straight out of a Dan Brown novel.
And like any good code, it adds another layer of intrigue to the study of alchemy, doesn't it?
And I have a feeling you're just the person to help us crack that code. So how do we even begin to decode this alchemical language? Where do you even start with something so dense with symbolism?
Well, it's not really about, deciphering a literal code, right? Think of it more like interpreting poetry.
Okay.
Each symbol, each color, each element that they use, it all pointed to, well, a deeper understanding of the universe and humanity's place in it.
Okay, so less like a substitution cipher and more like each element has a whole story behind it, like layers of meaning to kind of unpack.
Precisely. Take the Mutus Liber, for instance.
Okay.
This text, it's almost entirely composed of images.
Wow.
Engravings, really, that depict the alchemical process in a way that, well, the words just, they never could.
Right.
They believed that these images, they held a power, a way of transmitting knowledge directly to the soul,
It's visual, it's symbolic. It almost sounds like, a form of meditation on these concepts. Like staring at these images until their deeper meaning becomes clear.
It's a powerful concept. And it wasn't just about secrecy either.
Right.
These symbols, this language, it was a reflection of their worldview, this idea that everything is interconnected, this microcosm and macrocosm reflecting each other.
Which makes me think about, one of the most common alchemical symbols, the labyrinth. I mean, talk about a powerful symbol, loaded with potential meanings, right?
Absolutely. And it's no coincidence that we find labyrinths, embedded in the floors of these grand Gothic cathedrals like Chartres.
Right.
Walking the labyrinth, it was a metaphor for the alchemical process itself, a journey of purification, of kind of turning inward, confronting one's inner shadows to ultimately emerge, transformed.
So just like they sought to purify and refine matter, they saw this inward journey, this purification of the soul, as, essential to the alchemical process. Which makes me think, if the labyrinth is about this inner transformation, how did they view the ultimate goal of alchemy? Was it just about creating the Philosopher's Stone? Or was there something more to it?
The creation of the Philosopher's Stone, or the elixir of life, those were seen as byproducts, really, of a much grander ambition. Magnum opus.
The great work. What does that entail?
Think of it as the culmination of, the alchemist's journey, a state of perfect union between matter and spirit, a complete a complete understanding of the universe and one's place within it. It's a concept that, it's been depicted throughout history, in myths, in religious texts, in art. It's about transcending our limitations and achieving a higher state of being.
It sounds almost like a spiritual quest as much as a scientific one.
And that's what makes alchemy so fascinating. It straddled those lines, you see. It wasn't just about what was happening in the flask. It was about what was happening within the alchemists themselves.
So it's less about achieving something external and more about an internal transformation, like a shift in perspective.
And that's a concept, I think, that we can all relate to, even today, right?
Yeah.
The alchemists, they remind us that true transformation, true growth, it takes time. It takes dedication, a willingness to confront our own limitations. It's about the journey, the process of refining ourselves, just as they sought to refine matter.
And that's a process that's never truly finished, is it? There's always something more to learn, something more to refine, another layer to peel back.
Exactly. The alchemists, they believed in this constant striving, a constant pursuit of knowledge, of self-improvement. They saw themselves as active participants in this grand process of creation, not just observers.
And it's not just about, individual transformation either. This idea of refining and perfecting it extends outward as well, right? If they believed they could perfect matter, perfect themselves, it follows that they believed in perfecting the world around them as well.
It's a fascinating aspect of their philosophy, isn't it? They didn't see themselves as separate from nature, but as integral parts of a larger whole. Their work was about understanding and working in harmony with natural processes, not just controlling them.
Which brings us back to the practical side of alchemy, because they weren't, they weren't just philosophers or mystics. They were also meticulous experimenters, inventors, constantly kind of pushing the boundaries of what was known about the natural world.
Absolutely. They developed techniques, tools that would form the foundation of modern chemistry, really. Mm-hmm. And it's in the laboratory where we truly see the alchemists at work, blending their spiritual beliefs with a hands-on approach to understanding, the building blocks of reality.
Okay, so let's step into like the alchemist's workshop. What kind of tools and techniques are we talking about here? What would it have actually looked, smelled, sounded like to be in the presence of alchemists at work?
All right, so time to trade our philosopher's caps for some more practical gear. I'm ready to fire up the furnace and see what it was really like to work in an alchemist's lab. Imagine a space filled with the sense of, sulfur and exotic herbs. The air thick with smoke from the ever-burning furnace.
It sounds a bit more intense than my typical workspace.
Indeed. This wasn't just a laboratory, you see. It was seen as a sacred space, a microcosm of the universe itself. And every tool, every process, it was imbued with symbolic meaning.
Okay, so let's talk tools then. What kind of equipment were they working with?
One of the most iconic tools was the alembic. It was a type of distillation apparatus used to separate and purify liquids.
Okay.
They would heat a substance, often wine or herbs, in a bulbous vessel, and the vapors would rise through this long curved neck and eventually condense into a purified form.
So essentially like a really, really early version of the stills that we use today to make essential oils and such.
Precisely. They were interested in extracting the essence, the purest form of a substance, which they believed held, a greater power.
Right.
And then there was the crucible.
Okay.
A heat-resistant container used for melting and transforming metals. This is where the alchemists would subject matter to, intense heat, trying to transmute base metals into gold.
I imagine that took a lot of trial and error.
Alchemy was a patient art, to be sure.
Right.
The alchemists, they understood that transformation, it takes time.
Right.
And speaking of time, their furnaces, often called athanors, they were designed to maintain a constant temperature, but for long periods.
Wow.
Were fueled by, charcoal or wood and required this constant attention.
It's incredible to think about the dedication involved, to carefully tend to these furnaces for, days, weeks, even months on end.
It speaks to their belief in the power of transformation, their conviction that with enough time and the right conditions, anything was possible.
So they've got their tools, their furnaces are going. What were some of the actual techniques that they used to try and unlock these secrets of matter?
One fundamental technique was calcination.
Okay.
Which involved, heating a substance to a high temperature to drive off impurities. It was a process of purification, of reducing something to its core components.
Sort of like burning away the dross to reveal the hidden beauty beneath.
A fitting analogy. And then there was dissolution.
Okay.
The process of dissolving a substance, often in acid, to break it down and separate its elements.
And once they broke it down, then they could start to, piece it back together, right?
Exactly. That's where coagulation comes in. Taking a dissolved substance and causing it to solidify, often by adding another substance or altering the temperature. Think of it like taking something apart and putting it back together, but in a more refined form.
So it sounds like they were constantly manipulating the states of matter, like solids to liquids, liquids to vapors.
They were fascinated by those transitions. They saw in them a reflection of, the constant flux of the universe. And then there was sublimation, perhaps the most visually striking technique.
Sublimation. That sounds more like something out of like a science fiction movie.
Imagine this, okay? A solid substance, when heated, it transforms directly into a gas, bypassing the liquid state altogether.
Wow.
It's a dramatic display of transformation.
Yeah.
And to the alchemists, it represented the ability to isolate the most volatile, the most spiritual aspect of a substance.
It's incredible to think that they were doing all of this, centuries ago, without the benefit of modern scientific equipment.
Their tools may have been simpler, but their methods, they were surprisingly sophisticated. They were meticulous observers, constantly experimenting, innovating, refining their techniques. And while some of their theories might seem, a little fantastical to us now, we can't discount the impact they had on the development of modern science.
It's a good reminder that scientific progress, well, it isn't always linear. Sometimes it takes detours, wrong turns, and seemingly outlandish ideas to push the boundaries of what we think is possible.
And that's one of the enduring legacies of alchemy, isn't it?
Yeah.
This spirit of exploration, this relentless curiosity about the hidden workings of the universe. The alchemists, they remind us that true understanding, it requires not just observation, but also intuition, imagination, a willingness to embrace the unknown.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of alchemy, what are some key takeaways, that you hope our listeners that they walk away with?
I think it's important to remember that alchemy was, it was never just about, the pursuit of material wealth or immortality. It was about understanding our place in the universe, the interconnected nature of all things, and the potential for transformation that lies within us all.
It's a journey that's, it's both internal and external, this constant striving for knowledge, for balance, for self-improvement.
And while the methods of the alchemists may seem a little archaic to us now,
right,
their core values, curiosity, a thirst for knowledge, a belief in the power of transformation, these are timeless and universal.
It's a good note to end on, I think. The alchemists, in their own way, they were pioneers, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. And while they may not have achieved everything that they set out to do,
right,
their legacy, it continues to inspire us to explore, to question, and to never stop seeking a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world around us.
Indeed. The alchemical journey is one we all share, each of us striving to refine ourselves and the world around us. It's a journey worth taking, even if we never quite reach the philosopher's stone.